Hi, I'm Dave Waddell. I've worked for the past 30 years helping schools improve the environmental health and safety of their science, art, and technology programs. As an offshoot of this, I've helped amateur and professional artists stay healthy and protect the environment while creating vibrant art.
Hi, I'm Dave Waddell with the King County Art Hazards Project, and today we're in a print studio. As you can see here, we've got a bunch of different inks kept under lock and key because they're expensive. And in here we have some inks that have the AP symbol from the Art and Creative Materials Institute. And the AP means they've been approved as being comparatively non-toxic by some toxicologists at Duke University. The other ones we have here are CL labeled, and this means there's some type of a hazardous ingredient in there. Sometimes it's heavy metals. In this case, they have petroleum distillates, which are essentially equivalent to paint thinner. So a combustible solvent in there, which is the hazard that they face. One of the things you do with inks is you need to thin them. And in order to do that, we need solvents. And the nice thing here, if we go to this one, and I always put my gloves on before I handle any solvents, just in case anything's in there that can absorb through my skin, is they have a really nice flammable storage cabinet. These are designed to be fireproof and keep all the flammable liquids in here so you don't have to worry about the vapors getting out and setting fire to potentially your studio. One of the things you don't want to do with the flammable storage cabinet is you don't want to open the vents to allow potentially flammable vapors to escape from the cabinet. Not only does that keep them from getting into your breathing zone, but it also means if there's a source of ignition, it's not going to flash back into the cabinet and possibly set things on fire that's in there. So let's open up the cabinet and see what we find in here. Now, one of the challenges we find with print studio solvents is that they have liquids in them that are designed to dissolve inks and oils, and also pens. So if you're using a Sharpie marker like on the Gamsol bottle here, they may need to keep relabeling this Gamsol over and over and over again because it keeps dissolving what was written on there. And here's an example of one where you can see that it's starting to dissolve the letters on here. This is always a problem. People have tried putting a piece of tape over top of it because it kept dissolving, but this is dissolving also. One thing you can do is, once you get a decent label on here, is to wrap some clear, transparent wrapping shipping tape, and that at least will create a barrier between the solvent that's inside the bottle and the ink that's on the outside of the bottle. It's very important that bottles remain labeled well, because if you don't know what's in here, you don't know what the hazards are, and you don't know how to protect yourself from those hazards. So let's look at some of the things we've got in here. One of the containers we've got is the Daniel Smith D-Sol. This has the caution label on it also, and that's because it's a combustible liquid, harmful or fatal if swallowed. But petroleum distillates compared to something like lacquer thinner is actually a much safer alternative. And you need something that's going to dissolve inks that are solvent-based. So this is a decent choice. They have Gamsol as another one of these solvents. One of the other problems with these things is this is stored in a metal can. That metal can is not going to break down with the solvent in it. But plastic containers can break down over time with solvents in contact with them. And here you can see one that we're starting to get some whitening. It's starting to crack. And when I look at my gloves after handling it, I can see my gloves have gotten shiny. So the solvents and oils that are in here are starting to leak out of this container. And this container, because it's starting to fail, the contents inside here should be transferred to a new container that's intact and relabeled with the information on what the material is, as well as any hazards that that material has, whether it's flammable or combustible or corrosive, something like that. But in general, this is a good-looking print flammable storage cabinet. The materials that are in here are all compatible with each other. Things are in good shape. Generally, things are well labeled. And the cabinet's upright, steady, and seems to be in good condition. One recommendation we often make for these type of cabinets is to find a stud in the wall and put a little L bracket and attach it to the top of the flammable storage cabinet and attach it to the wall, so in case of an earthquake, this thing won't tip over and break all the containers that are in there. We were talking about labels on the containers inside the flammable storage cabinet. That also can be an issue when people take the materials out of the flammable storage cabinet and transfer them into a secondary container like these spray bottles. This one has an excellent label on it. It says vinegar plus water plus salt. It's very easy to read. It doesn't have any warning about the hazards associated with it, but it's vinegar and water and salt. There aren't really any hazards to warn anybody about. It gets more complicated when you get into bottles that have had a lot of wear and tear. Maybe some solvents have worn off the labels that's on it. And now we have no idea what's in here. Now, whoever was using it may have, but they're gone now. So it's up to someone like me to try to figure out what this stuff is. It's a little bit green, and there's a bottle of Simple Green down below here. So maybe it's Simple Green, but I don't know for sure. It gets even harder with clear bottles like this one. Clear liquid inside, no labels on the outside. There's a good chance it's water, but it could be an acid, it could be a flammable solvent. They're all transparent too. So we really want to have the name of the chemical that's exactly the same as the bottle or can that you poured out of to fill this container with it. And we also want to have the primary hazards associated with the material that's in here. So if this was an acid, you would have the word corrosive on it. If it was a flammable liquid or combustible liquid, you would have flammable or combustible as well as the name. That way, in case it spills, people know if they need to be careful about cleaning it up. If it's water, the word water would be fine. So now we're going to talk about etching and printmaking. This is a tank, plastic tank that has ferric chloride solution in it, and it's used to etch copper plates for intaglio printmaking. Ferric chloride is corrosive, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my chemical splash goggles. These are designed to keep any liquids that splash from getting onto my eyes, and I like my eyes. So if we open up the tank, we'll see that we've got something set up here to be able to clip a copper plate on that's had some resist put on. And what I want to talk about is what you do with the plate when you pull it out, because you've soaked it in this ferric chloride, and some of that copper is going to be etched and dissolved on the outside of that plate. So when that plate is lifted up, the temptation is to rinse that directly into the sink, which can rinse not only the acid into the sink, which can corrode your pipes, but also can rinse some of that toxic copper down into the sink. And the copper is quite toxic to aquatic organisms, including the bacteria that are in sewage treatment plants or the bacteria that are in your septic tank if you're on septic. So we want to try to keep that copper and that acid out of our drain and out of that sink. So what can we do? Well, you can have a little tray down inside the sink and rinse a little bit of that copper off in there with a little spray bottle, kind of like the ones we have here. And that gets that first concentrated acid off. And then the next step will be to move it to a soaking tray where it's just clean water, and you can rinse off the acid and the copper that's on the plate inside that clean water, then transfer it to a second container, a second tray that's got more clean water in it. So it's diluted in the first one, and then it's really clean by the time you pull it out of the second one. And over time, we'll have to address taking care of the liquids that are in those trays. But in the short term, it's going to be a much safer way to work with it, as long as you've got a spot to have those trays and you've got some good signs up on the trays to make sure people understand that they're contaminated. We talked about moving the plates inside these trays for soaking. Here's an example of a tray that's been used for soaking the plates. As you can see, we're starting to get discolored. One thing to monitor with these trays is after a while, the acid can make them brittle. And they've also placed tape in the corners. And this tape in the corners is a way to protect the tray from having those sharp edges of the plate either break it or at least crack it a little bit, which could cause that acidic wastewater to leach out and contaminate the floor. Another problem with this could be that if the tray itself is too small or too large, you're going to end up with a very unwieldy situation of trying to either cram the plate down in there or having such a large amount of water that it's going to be very hard for you to move that tray around without sloshing the water out, which could have some of the acid in there. So you want to make sure you've got a plate to tray ratio that's going to make it very easy to move the plates in and out, and also hold enough water to be able to submerge that plate inside the tray that you've got.
To learn more about chemical hazards in schools, visit doh.wa.gov/school environment.